thank you so much also to Embrace Dignity. Just to say that I feel humbled to be part of this incredible panel of speakers. I will share my screen also. Yeah, I hope it's working.
Yes.
Yeah, all right. Okay. So, hi everyone. So I'm Jonathan Machler, working for CAP International. Just one word very quickly about CAP, the Coalition for the Abolition of Prostitution. So we are a coalition of 35 grassroots and survivors-led organizations in 27 countries, united around a common goal, the abolition of the systems of prostitution and human trafficking for the purpose of sexual exploitation. Our objectives are to end the systems of prostitution and sexual exploitation, to provide effective protection, support, and exit pathways for victims of prostitution and trafficking in human beings, and to support and amplify the voices of grassroots organizations and survivors-led organizations. So we currently support more than, our members currently support more than 16,000 victims of prostitution and human trafficking in around 100 shelters and daycare centers. I want to say also that we are very proud to have Embrace Dignity as one of our member organizations. And so, yes, today I was asked to give more details about the impact of the equality model law in France 5 years after its implementation. So I will highlight the work done by a collective. So CAP is part of this collective of organizations called FACTS. It's a collective of grassroots organizations that are at the front line of the implementation of the law in France. This collective is made of 4 organizations: Mouvement d'Uni, Fondation Cell, Amicale d'Uni, and CAP International. I just want to give to give a precision about something. We talk about 5 years of implementation of the law in France, but actually it kind of took 1 year and a half, almost 2 years to have it implemented for real, because it takes time after a law is officially adopted to have it implemented in the country. So we should talk about 3 years and a half of implementation of the law in France. So the law is based on 5 pillars. So it's really the pillars of the equality model that Taina described. The first pillar is the full decriminalization of all prostituted persons. The second pillar is to provide an access to an exit program for all prostituted persons. The third pillar is protection and support for all victims, French and foreigners. So we take in consideration the fact that in France, most of the victims of prostitution and trafficking are foreign women, and it's important to include this element in the law. The fourth pillar is to refuse the exploitation of the vulnerability of others by by prohibiting the purchase of sexual acts, so targeting the demand. And the fifth pillar is to educate and sensitize the public opinion to the reality of prostitution, and to try to change the collective mindset regarding prostitution in the society. So the first result after these 3-4 years of implementation of the law is the end of penalization for women in prostitution. So we often hear, because there are a lot of fake news regarding the implementation of abolitionist law in France and in other countries, we often hear a confusion between prohibitionism and abolitionism. But what the primary effect of abolitionism in a country is the end of criminalization for women in prostitution. So in the 10 years before the adoption of the law, an average of 2,000 prostituted persons were penalized every year in the country. Since the law was adopted, this figure decreased to 0. So that's an important figure to highlight. Right now, we have implemented around 570 exit programs in the country. So these exit programs create new rights for victims of prostitution. It recognizes the status of victim of prostitution, because prostitution has been recognized as a form of violence by law. And this law creates new rights, first of all, in terms of psychosocial and socio-professional accompaniment. And we have good results in terms of socio-professional reintegration. For instance, regarding the persons supported by our member organizations in France, at the end of the exit program, 87.5% of them were in a stable professional situation. So this law provides actually a successful model for social professional reintegration for victims of prostitution. The other effect is targets specifically migrants. In France, we have more than 90% of the women in prostitution who are not French. Most of them are undocumented. And so when you benefit from an exit program, you can have access to a residency permit as part of the program, because we consider that these women don't have to face the anti-migrant climate and anti-migrant policies that are in place, that can be in place sometimes in France. So that was one of the struggle of the organizations that supported the adoption of the law. We really had to take in consideration the reality of prostitution in France, and prostitution in France right now largely concerns migrant women. Regarding the demand and how we target the demand. So the offense of resorting to prostitution leads to a fine of 1,500 euros. It can go up to 3,750 euros. And in case of aggravating circumstances, it can reach 7 years of imprisonment and up to 100,000 euros of fine if, for instance, the victim is a minor, and in the case of human trafficking. So since 2016, between 2016 and 2018, we've had 5,000 sex buyers who have been penalized under this law. We don't have the data since 2018. So we are working, we're advocating so that the Ministry of Interior gives us more information regarding the current numbers of the penalized sex buyers in France. So this is again a figure regarding the sex buyers. So there has been an effort between 2017 and 2018, but again, we're advocating to get more figures. We know who are the sex buyers now because we see them. Actually, many of them have also access to a sensitization workshop. So these sensitization workshops have been created to have not only a repressive action towards sex buyers, but also to provide sensitization and to try to change their minds and to prevent recidivism. So 100% of sex buyers who were arrested are men. 60% are married or in a relationship, and 70% of them are family men. We must say also that survivors of the prostitution system are at the front line of this workshop because they intervene during these workshops, and their intervention have a very powerful impact regarding the understanding of the repercussions and consequences of the acts for sex buyers. Regarding the results in the fight against criminal networks and access to justice for victims, we can see that this law has a powerful and positive impact in this fight, because since its implementation, we observed an increase of 54% of procedures against pimps. There were 2.35 million confiscated and reinvested in protection and rehabilitation programs for victims of prostitution. Actually, there has been 16 million euros seized and confiscated to pimps and traffickers, and we are fighting for to have this money allocated for protection and rehabilitation for victims. And what we observed is that there has been 7 times more compensations and reparations for victims of the prostitution and trafficking systems. So this equality model law and the fact that we target the demand and that we reinforce the struggle and the fight against traffickers is actually showing positive results right now. In terms of mentalities, because it's an important part of our fight, the mindset is starting to change. We conducted a survey at the beginning of January that shows that 78% of the French people think that the law is a good thing. It's even more positive regarding the youth. We have 84% of the young people in the country that would be in favor of maintaining the law. And 81% of women see prostitution as violence against women. But we are still advocating so that our public authorities fully sensitize and organize public campaigns regarding prostitution and sexual trafficking in the country. It hasn't been done yet, and we are pushing for it. What we are advocating for right now that we have the law, is to have an ambitious and proper implementation of the law. Because actually we know, and this is obvious, that it is more expensive for public authorities to maintain a system of oppression that is prostitution than to end it. If we look at the economic and fiscal damages of prostitution, just in terms of annual tax evasion, it costs 4 times more than what it would cost to end and to provide exit programs to 4,000 prostituted persons every year. So in France right now, we have 40,000 prostituted persons. 85% of them are women. And we know the cost of an exit program for each person. And if we could provide 4,000 exit programs per year, it would actually make a real change in the country, and it would actually save money for the state. So it is not actually a matter of cost for the state; it's a matter of political willingness. I just wanted to highlight a few comparative data we gathered between France and Germany and between Sweden and Netherlands. I chose France and Germany because the populations are quite similar, and same for Sweden and Netherlands. So in France, as I explained, we could summarize the situation by work in progress. We are happy to have the law. We are happy about the way it works, where and when it is implemented. But we think and we advocate for a more ambitious implementation of the model. We need to have more resources allocated to make this model work properly. But we can compare with Germany. Germany adopted a sex work law in 2002. In France, you have 40,000 prostituted persons. In Germany, you have 400,000 prostituted persons. It's 10 times more. You also have 3,500 brothels in France, in Germany, sorry. And if we compare with Sweden, Sweden adopted the abolitionist law in 1999, and Netherlands adopted the sex work model in 2000. In Sweden right now, you have around 1,000 prostituted persons in the country. In Netherlands, you have between 25,000 and 30,000 prostituted persons in the country. If we go in details, you've had in Sweden 78% of decrease of prostitution over 10 years. You have a reduction of 45% of the demand between 1996 and 2014. And you have zero murder of a prostituted person since the law passed. If we compare to the Netherlands, which adopted the opposite model 20 years ago. There has been an evolution of the number of prostituted persons since 1981. The number of prostituted persons was multiplied by 10. You now have 25,000 prostituted persons in the country. And the networks are still controlled by the organized crime. And it didn't reduce at all the human trafficking system in Netherlands, because you still have at least 6,000 victims of trafficking in human beings being exploited every year in the country. Let's go. Also, I highlighted the results in France already. I can go in details regarding the results in Germany. In Germany, so you have 10 times more prostituted persons than in France. What is interesting is that over these 400 prostituted persons, only 76 of them asked for the sex worker status. Because actually this status doesn't provide any kind of protection and doesn't improve the situation of prostituted women. You have legal and illegal prostitution markets that are controlled by mafia networks, according to prominent policemen and experts in Germany, such as Manfred Paulus. And you have, for instance, this is a picture of a street in Hamburg that is forbidden for women who are not sold in prostitution. So, for instance, if you want to enter this, if you want to enter this street as a woman and you are not sold in prostitution, you cannot access this street. So this is the state of men and women equality in Germany and the impact of the normalization of the prostitution system in the country. The last example in terms of financial weight. So you have Spain and Germany who have legalized, it's a little bit more complex for Spain, but who have a legalized prostitution market. Spain generate between 12 and 18 billion euros of profits. I mean, this profit is generated by the sex industry. It's 14.6 billion euros in Germany, and it's 3.2 billion in France. It's still too much, but you can clearly see the difference between the different models in the different countries. I will share this screen. It will be too long to read, but it's a testimony by Manfred Paulus, who is a German policeman and an expert and EU expert in trafficking, and who describes the system of prostitution and the negative impact of the German model regarding prostitution. So What about South Africa? I just want to end this presentation by quoting someone I admire a lot, and because I was also asked what elements can we give and how can we inform decision makers and leaders to try to inform them about the realities of prostitution. There is a great leader that talked about prostitution before, and I think not only in South Africa, but I think all leaders around the world should really get inspiration from this man, Mr. Thomas Sankara. So I will just finish my presentation by reading this quote. Our view is that prostitution is only a product of the social injustices and exploitative philosophies that lead societies to degeneration. This is why in Burkina Faso we are fighting prostitution, but our strategy clearly lays down the obligation for us to kill the evil without killing the patient. That is to say, to eliminate prostitution while protecting the prostituted woman. Yes, for us in Burkina Faso, the prostituted woman is just an innocent victim of societies transformed into a jungle where everything is used to live, sometimes just to survive. Prostitution is the organized theft of a woman's grace, the savage exploitation of the bodies of others. It is the exploitation of human beings by the porous system of purchasing capacity. In Burkina Faso, we are fighting to provide women in prostitution with jobs that would free them from the exploitation of others and allow them to flourish and regain their dignity and rights. All rights are to be conquered, and it is only through persistent struggles that you will wrest your right to escape from the police and harassing methods that would want to marginalize you and reduce you to simply seeking in resignation a few palliatives to organize and protect what unjust societies would hypocritically like to present as your profession. So I will end my presentation here. Thank you so much. Thank you. Thanks to Embrace Dignity, and I give the floor to Moses as well.